Nozzles engraving build plates, but it's been like that for a while, so let's just look past it. Never leave filament in a hot car, and Bambu Lab is having some issues with their MQTT servers. Let's talk about it. Hey, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to getting your printers fixed and running right. And if you are dealing with that kind of a problem where things just ain't going the way you want it to, at least as far as your 3D printer goes, we are here to help. You can reach out to us on all the social media platforms. Links are on screen and in that description. So slide into those DMs and we'll do what we can to help you out. I personally mostly monitor Twitter or X or whatever the heck they're calling it this week. So if you do want to get help and you want to get right to me, that's a great way to do it. And hey, we're always here to help. We're going to start off with an interesting one from my buddy Luke over at Luke's Laboratory, and another one from Adam of Barnacorn Design. They both have similar issues. Let's see what's going on here. We can see Luke is saying, in a rare reprieve from its normal use, Stable Bot printed out a tiny cam lock for the car shop next door. Don't mind the plate. This was before beacon contact and swapped a nozzle that was longer than expected. And Barnacorn Design here, Adam said, don't mind the plate. I've said that before. Yeah, I get this. And I feel it in my soul, because like the rest of the build plate's totally fine. And you know what? It's an aesthetic choice. Don't worry about it. I mean, heck, some of us are buying build plates now that are deliberately have raised areas on them. This is an Ember Prototypes plate. And if you're wondering, Grant, who the heck is Ember Prototypes and where can I get one of these? Well, we're going to card to the most recent podcast that we did where we interviewed Phil from Ember Prototypes, and we got pretty deep into the plates themselves, but also all about small business. And no, we didn't give out the secret sauce. Sorry, it's not what the podcast is about. But it was a great episode, especially for you small business owners out there or aspiring small business owners. Phil and I share a lot of great value in there and just some real talk. It's not often you get real talk like that on a show, so greatly appreciated, Phil. Just like I dig those plates, these printers dig those plates, if you feel me. This is why having a system that can deal with Z offset automatically is important. So beacon contact, which is what Luke is talking about here, that is both now an eddy probe plus a contact probe, which is super cool. And the cool thing with this whole setup is if you were a current beacon user, it's just now available for you, which is super cool. And we can see that beacon contact requires less than 30 grams of force for it to actuate, whereas some of the competition requires over 500 grams. That is over a pound of pushing force, which can absolutely damage build plates. So that's a really cool system. And yeah, it's available for $65, and the Rev H is available for $80. This is what I love about projects like this, where the beacon sensor, up until April 12th of 2024, was just an eddy current sensor. So it would just scan the bed, which eddy current sensors for bed probing are pretty cool as it is, because they can detect steel plates, right? They use eddy currents, they can detect things. It's a really cool system. But see, if you don't have a metal bed, eddy current sensors don't work, or at least metal reasonably close to it. They don't work. So when you integrate also a touch probe into it, which is exactly what they did, which appears to be something on the software side. I am sure it is secret sauce that I don't particularly understand. And because it now doesn't require having a metallic bed, you can print on thick pieces of glass, you could print on bacon, you could print on butter if you wanted to, and there is no temperature swing. This is a really, really cool product that solves a lot of the problems, and starting as low as $65, that's not bad at all. And it is supported on every beacon unit ever sold. Simply update the firmware of your beacon, and this feature is entirely free. That is all about supporting the community. Amen to that. I love that kind of thing. Good job, Beacon 3D. I do want to take a look at what they're doing. Maybe we'll put one on the Trident or some upcoming builds that we have planned. I'm excited. A1, less than 5 days old, Blob of Death, help. How can I fix/address the issue the best way? My printer's only 5 days old and I never experienced this issue this bad on my Ender 3, which I bought this to replace. Cooling fan, small plastic tab on the back broke off. I saw the whole thing is only $10 to replace, but again, 5 days, less than 30 prints, and it failed this bad on Bambu PLA. Also, imagine for the smaller green blob has some black rubber or silicone. I can't figure out what part that ripped off of it. It was not the hot end silicone, as it doesn't appear to have anything torn off. I'm assuming that is going to be the silicone sock for the actual hot end itself. It's a pretty rough blob of doom, because the hot end, I believe they have silicone socks. I'm fairly certain that's what it is, and it just pulled itself off. Yeah, that's absolutely what that is. That is a silicone sock for the hot end. Thankfully, it appears to be in good shape. You might be able to reuse it. So how do you solve this? Well, part of this is making sure that your printer does what it's supposed to. Bambu printers are touted as the machines that just work. You don't have to mess with them. They work every single time. You're never going to have a problem, and anything that happens is directly due to user error. And that's not exactly true. Well, yes, they have a lot of automated procedures that can make your life easier when it comes to 3D printing. It is a machine, and therefore it is not infallible. And because it is not infallible, it can get bad readings. So the A1 does a nozzle probe, right? Very similar to a lot of 3D printers on the market. It uses a load cell, and it detects when the nozzle has contacted the bed. If the nozzle is dirty and the cleaning cycle does not clean off the gunk from the nozzle, it will not get a good bed scan, if you will. And while the X1 has LiDAR, it doesn't. And you're kind of on your own. This could also be because of the print itself, got knocked off the plate, got stuck around the hot end, but from just looking at what we see here, there's only a small piece of the build here and here that appeared to have broken off, and the rest of it is just caked around the hot end. Now, this person got lucky in my opinion, right? This is a pretty bad blob of doom, but they got it all off, and it appears they got everything off with minimal damage. Now, the rest of that black piece, I don't really know, but there's definitely something there, and you know what? I think you'll figure it out eventually. But how do you stop this? You watch your printers, right? And I know that's not the answer that you want to hear. Nobody wants to hear, oh, I just need to spend more time watching my printers because, well, it's kind of a pain in the butt. And it's a time waster. But ultimately, it's kind of what you need to do. If you're not confident and you have a relatively new printer, like a 5-day-old 3D printer, you should not be running it unattended. You should be making sure that everything looks good. Now, if you don't have any issues with the Bambu Lab Cloud, I don't know why you wouldn't, but whatever. I'm not getting into that discussion today. You can monitor your A1. It's got a camera, and you can turn off the print remotely. It also has AI fail detection in it, so if you had that turned off, the machine knows. It's just not signaling you, and that's another discussion for another day. And so we can see that a top commenter says this is user error, not a printer defect. And the guy replies saying, buddy, it was adhered when the print started. First several layers were perfectly fine. And this to me is just really not that nice of a way to deal with newbies in the industry. And we've called out the toxicity before. We'll card to that video again if you want, but it's only really gotten worse. This orange versus green or green versus the world, it doesn't help anybody, guys. The goal of all of this is to make sure that we are all printing. There's a teachable moment here. But as Nero shamelessly stole from Reddit, and I'm going to shamelessly steal from him, this is kind of what we deal with, right? This is a lot of the fails that we see online, right? What printer should I get? Oh, we're not going to Google. How do I use this? We're not going to Google. Any tips with a bad photo? Help with a blob of doom, which is kind of what we just saw here. Why isn't it smooth? Photo taken with an old flip phone. I leveled my bed. You clearly didn't. Why is this happening? Can I resin print in my bedroom? Why won't my first layer stick? I feel that because yes, if you owned a printer before this, you'd likely kind of understand. But I think what they're really asking here is why did it happen on the Bambu? And they didn't have these experiences happening on another printer. Well, in my opinion, the best way for something like this, since it is likely recording, is to go back and check the recording and see what happened. Likely, the printer ran into something, it popped the printer off, and then it just started blobbing around itself. Thankfully, nothing of real value seemed to be harmed. It's like a $10 or $15 part. It's no big deal, and it looks like the fan probably still works in the condition that it's in. But guys, we gotta be more kind to each other. Seriously. From STL, Denise saying, how hot is Midwest Rep Rap Fest? Don't leave PLA in your back seat hot. Check this out. Got that Carolina squat on her, if you feel me. So those of you that are dealing with the heat wave in the Midwest of the United States right now, I'm sorry. It is not fun, and we have friends and fans up in Michigan who were actually dealing with more heat than we were dealing with here in Florida. So it's not fun. This weather sucks. And yeah, you cannot leave 3D printed parts in vehicles. In fact, it's likely hot enough right now inside of cars, especially darker colored cars, that even PETG will get soft from just the temperature of the inside of the car. That's why we say, don't leave animals inside of cars. It's not their fault, right? Unfortunately, this part is pretty broken. There's no way to fix it. If you wanted to, you could try reheating it back up, but Denise is pretty lucky here because likely alongside of this dragster was a lithium battery, and lithium batteries aren't a huge fan of high heat environments either. And when a lithium battery decides to go up, you really can't put them out. If you are going to be dealing with these electric dragsters or the death racers or anything like that at these events, please, please, please make sure that you have proper storage for your lithium batteries. I really don't care about the heat damaging printed parts, right? Like, it's very obvious that PLA will get damaged in a hot car. We've talked about this many times on the show. I am more concerned about the batteries deciding that they're going to get a little spicy. And spicy batteries make for an insurance claim that no one really wants to deal with. This is unfortunately a total loss. It doesn't appear that there are major parts of this vehicle that are reusable. I mean, obviously, like the tires and the drivetrain might be, but the frame, the thing that matters, isn't. Now, I'm hoping that Denise did try to re-straighten it. I would put it back in the car, let it get warm, try to re-straighten it, and run it still. Because for the 3D printed dragsters, aerodynamics is not going to matter all that much. Traction is going to be, you know, your goal here, and aerodynamics are not really going to come into play for quite some time. And I like how a lot of people are saying, run it anyways. I'm here for it. Run it anyways. It does appear that it could still run. I mean, it's dragging a little bit there, so you might want to warm it back up, but like, send it. Aerodynamics really don't matter, right? Traction does. That's what we care about. My prints won't stay on the bed. I'm very new to printing, and whenever I try to print something, be it supports or the print itself, a few layers in the print will start moving on the bed mid-print. I think it's being nudged by the nozzle. I've tried adhesive. I've tried to clean the bed with rubbing alcohol between each print. It's an Ender 3 S1 Pro. They've tried nozzle temps from 190 to 210. Ben is at 60. They're using Overture PLA. Color really doesn't matter all that much, although black does often need a little bit more temperature, but it's not a temperature problem. And ideas on how to fix this, any help would be greatly appreciated. From Python Bashman, who I know who you are because you're in our Discord and you actually submitted this to us, so I'm not going to dox you, but this is great. Actual photo from your build plate watching your nozzle go by. Your Z offset is way too high. Like, that's an appropriate level of trolling. You're not being a jerk. You're telling them the answer and you're making a bit of a joke about it. 100%. Yeah, your nozzle's way too far from your build plate. So how do we fix it, right? Well, you got to make sure your nozzle gets closer. If you're using a printer that doesn't have auto bed leveling, it's just the screws and the wheels, I guess, at the edge of the print bed. You loosen them, the bed will come up some and get closer to the nozzle. You could do it by adjusting the Z offset in the slicer, but that's not my personal preference because now whenever you change the bed, you still have that negative offset in the slicer that can cause you to gouge your print bed. But yeah, we've talked about it before. If your ruffles have ridges, if there are ridges in between your lines, so if your lines have a ridge in between them, they are too close to the bed. If there's a valley in between your lines where there's a gap, you're too far. And well, there's a pretty big valley here. And every picture here is just indicative of being too far. So simple fix, easy thing to get right, no problems at all. Last but not least, Bambu Lab is proving that once again, if you are inside of a walled garden ecosystem, you can do whatever the heck you want. And well, Too bad. Either like it or don't. They put out a tweet today saying, "Dear Bambu Lab users, we want to share some insight on a problem we're experiencing with third-party apps and services. The simple explanation is that some customers decide to integrate their Bambu Lab printers with third-party apps, which generate an excessive amount of connections and requests to Bambu servers. Our investigation shows account generates over 1,000 MQTT client connections simultaneously and kept in cycles of nearly 1 minute. Until a better solution is implemented with future updates, we are forced to apply temporary bans for high requests made to the servers, which is between 24 hours and 7 days. More technical information can be found at a forum post, which we will have linked in the description for you. Please note this temporary ban does not impact regular users that don't use third-party integrations. Users will continue to be able to send prints remotely from Bambu Studio to the printers, but remote interaction, camera access, or metrics reporting will stop working. Thank you for understanding, Bambu Lab." So what is this? This is we are going to shut down anybody that is using these servers for MQTT. That's for like Home Assistant and that kind of thing. And we're going to wait for them to complain to solve the problem. In their forum post, which is blinding bright, by the way, can we get dark mode? But we can see that they call out one specifically. It comes with Home Assistant applications based on Node-RED low-code tools, which are developed by unofficial third-party organizations and individuals. This is where it gets really cool, because the sole developer of the popular Node-RED integration is in the forum trying to work with Bambu. So I'm hoping that they can figure things out. My assumption is someone misplaced a decimal, and it's resulting in quite a bit of these calls to the MQTT server. But see, there's a simple solution to all of this, and KF, otherwise known as // if you don't know that name, look him up. Especially when it comes to DJI. He has his particular interest in all of this stuff, we should say. And I like his solution. Open source the MQTT backend and call it a day. We don't want to be connected to your backend anyways, but we still want the features. There's no reason you couldn't just run your own locally based MQTT server to do all of this stuff for you. And as Joe right below him said, was worried Octo Everywhere was affected, but looks like connection still works. And we can see here that Quinn from Octo Everywhere says that they're adding Logic to support connecting to MQTT via the Bambu cloud instead of directly connecting to the printer locally. While he understands the need to protect the limited computing resources on the local printer, it's a much better user experience to allow third-party plugins to connect directly over LAN. It would be awesome if a similar rate-limiting anti-abuse protections could be added to local firmware so local LAN can still be used. And we can see that the P1 and A1 series already have connected client limits. 5 for the P1 and the A1 is less if Wolf with Sword remembers correctly. And we can see that Wolf with Sword has actually identified some issues. I'm not going to go through this because a lot of it is, quite frankly, way more than my knowledge with Home Assistant because it's just not something that we use here. But this is one of those things where I get a little upset. This reminds me of BMW, where they said, you know, we're going to be converting options on your vehicle to subscriptions, right? So heated steering wheels and heated seats. I'm not sure if that's still a thing, but it definitely was at one point where they were charging a subscription to utilize these features, which is stupid, right? I get from a manufacturer standpoint, it's easier just to add it into all the vehicles and just not enable it if the person doesn't want it. And certainly for vehicles like Tesla who do this similar thing as well, there can be some value associated with it. However, doing it after you already own the equipment is a bit of a no-no, in my opinion. Yes, having 1,000 MQTT client connections simultaneously is a bit of a problem, but bringing down such harsh limits when you've only found more than 10. What is more than 10 could mean 10,000, it could mean 11. I feel like that we might be overreacting and waiting for those that are having those particular problems to say, hey, I have a problem. I understand the ban, but it would be nice if individuals could understand why that ban is and then understand how they could solve it. And I don't think the average user is going to get that kind of information from Bambu. And while yes, that having 1,000 MQTT client connections simultaneously is a bit of a problem, why don't we just ban the offending people and let them know what's going on and allow them opportunities to fix it? This to me is a gross overreaction and shows how much control Bambu actually has over their ecosystem. Now, I'm not certain how much this can affect systems like the Panda Touch from Big Tree Tech, which we have. If you guys want to see it, let me know. I don't know if it can work in a local environment, but the nice thing is I can just reflash it with the Clipper firmware and use it on our Clipper printers. So we might just do that instead, since we can make Clipper safe. I have no issues with Clipper. But that would be a bit of a problem if you owned a bunch of Bambu printers and used it in a farming scenario and you were checking on your printers often. They would quickly go through their allotted amount of MQTT credits and potentially get banned. Do I have a good solution for this? No, I don't, because I'm not a developer and it's not something that I specifically know how to fix. But see, this will never be a problem for me because I will never connect one of my Bambu printers to their cloud. It's not safe, and we've talked about it before. And when they have this much control over your machine remotely, doesn't make me feel very good. I'd like to know your thoughts down in those comments, though. I'm not someone that is really affected by this, so my opinion on it is more of, this is hurting the many because of the few. And I don't want users to lose functionality because they messed up a decimal point. It'd be a lot better for them to get a warning on screen that they can quickly go in and fix, because guess what? Fat finger errors happen, man. For heck, I sent a client a quote. Thankfully, it wasn't an official quote, where I was supposed to say $50 and I said $5. It happens. Thankfully, they were super cool. They caught my mistake before I did, right? We all make mistakes, but giving people the opportunity to correct those mistakes is a big deal. And speaking of mistakes, I made a mistake 2 weeks ago. We were talking about the clogged Diamondback from Man of the Sky, who I said, and they do not recommend you do cold pulls. You can just clean a Diamondback nozzle with a steel acupuncture needle. That is incorrect. And in fact, the team from Diamondback reached out and said, you know that's not right. Like, no, I thought we weren't supposed to do cold pulls. And no, you can do cold pulls. Be careful with the needles. The steel needle is softer than the hard diamond. They said yes, but it can still cause chipping to the nozzle from the needle, because at the end of the day, diamond, specifically polycrystalline diamond, is a little bit brittle as a material, right? You can't pound on it with a hammer, you will break it. And so I want to make sure that we correct that, right? So we're going to issue a correction in that video. I guess that's now a feature that we should have, and if we don't, as soon as we do get that feature, we're going to issue that correction. I think that's a big deal. While theoretically it's not going to damage anything if you're careful about it, we want to make sure that we're giving you guys the correct thing to do. And I had a bit of an oh crap moment when I saw the email come in from Harris, one of the guys over at Diamondback, who, fan of the channel, thanks for that, dude, and thank you for correcting me, because nobody else caught that, and I certainly didn't either. So that's what we love about this series. I'm not always going to be correct, and anytime that I am wrong, I want to be corrected. Heck, I tell that to our team. I'm not always going to be right. I don't want people that are just going to agree with me. I want people that are going to say, this is wrong, here is why, and this is why. I love that. Thank you to the Diamondback team for making that correction, because I would be giving out bad advice. That's the last thing that we want to do here. So if you do have a Diamondback nozzle, you are okay to do the cold pulls. Just, you know, basic protocol for cold pulls. Heat up to temp, let it cool down to about 100°C, then Beyblade that filament, let it rip, get it out there, and life will be good. Keep doing that until the nozzle's clear. You should be good to go. That's what we love about this, right? Part of the video making is also making sure that we are accurate, and when we are not, to go back and correct those mistakes. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that we care about is making sure that we are providing good advice to you all that is factual. And when it's not, we need to correct ourselves. Unlike some companies. I'm not calling anybody out specifically. Anyways, I do want to call out the names listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. Thank you all for making these videos possible. It is greatly appreciated because without your generous contributions, we could not make videos as often as we do. So thank you for allowing this to be possible. And remember, if you do want to join and help us out financially, you could do so via the links in the description. PayPal, Patreon, and YouTube channel members are all currently options at the moment, starting as little as $1 a month, which gets you lots of behind-the-scenes access with more 360 content coming out soon. So stay tuned for that. And hey, while you're down there, don't forget to leave a like on the video because that helps out a bunch and helps the channel grow. And subscribe if you haven't. If you've gotten this far and you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing. Right below me will be the entire PrintFixFriday series, and next to that will be my first torture testing of the Diamondback nozzles. There's some rough ones to come, and that's all I'm going to say. Stay safe out there, don't forget to call your loved ones, and as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. Opa. I'm sorry, but there's no room for cat today. I'm sorry. I'm glad that you came by, and I love you. But there is no room for cat today.